good afternoon to everyone. In the previous classes, we are all learned about the symmetric key ciphers and the block cipher and the block cipher modes of operation. So in that, we are study about the AES and DES encryption algorithms. So in this class, we are going to learn about the symmetric key ciphers. In this class, we are going to learn about the symmetric key cipher. And also it is known as a public key cryptosystems or public key cryptography. The concept of public key cryptography evolved from an attempt to attack two of the most difficult problem that is associated with the symmetric encryption. The first problem is the key distribution problem and second problem is the digital signature. In key distribution, under the symmetric encryption, it requires either two of the following steps. One is that the two communicants already share a key which somehow has been to distributed them. And second one is either they can use the key distribution center to share a key. So in the concept of symmetric encryption, both the user will share the same kind of keys. But in asymmetric encryption is a form of crypto system in which encryption and decryptions are performed using the different keys. Either the sender will encrypt by the private key or encrypt by the public key. The asymmetric encryption, they can be used for confidentiality, authentication, or sometimes both. So it is computationally infeasible to determine the decryption key given only the knowledge of cryptographic algorithm and the encryption key. Because in the asymmetric key crypto systems, we have been using two different keys. Either two of the keys can be used for encryption and another one key is used for decryption. So this is the pictorial representation of encryption and decryption in public key crypto system. In encryption, the encryption algorithm uses the plain text as well as key. The key, it represents either primary private key or public key, while your sender will encrypt the data by the way of using encryption key, that is the private key. The private key means it's sender's own private key. Well, the sender will use their own private key and will encrypt the data and produce the ciphertext. The particular ciphertext will received by the decryption function or receiver side. The receiver or decryption function will use the two kind of input. One is a ciphertext and another one is a public key. The public key which is exactly matched with the sender's private key. So the receiver will use the same public key which is shared by the sender and the ciphertext as input, and finally the receiver will get the plain text data. So this is the pictorial representation of encryption and decryption function. So in both sender and receiver will have a set of key pools. The key pool represents it maintains a public key record of all users. This is the another pictorial representation of asymmetric key encryption. The sender will send the plain text data to the encryption function. The encryption function will get two kind of input. One is that plain text data and another one is the key. So in this example, we have encrypted the plain text data by using the user's public key. After completing the encryption function, we will get the cipher data. The cipher data fed as input to the decryption function. So here in the decryption function, we have a ciphertext as input and another one is we have a private key. This is private key which is for the receiver's private key. By using this private key and ciphertext, we have been decrypted the plain text and finally the receiver will receive the as form of plain text data which is shared by the sender. So in this figure, we have learned about the public key and the private key and the plain text and the decrypted text as well as plain text. So in the public key encryption scheme has 6 ingredients. So far that is plain text, encryption algorithm, public and private keys, and ciphertext. So all of us, we know about the plain text. The plain text, that is the readable message or a data that is fed into the algorithm as input. Either it's an encryption algorithm or it may be a decryption algorithm. The data is fed to the input. Next one is the encryption algorithm. The encryption algorithm will perform various transformations on the plain text. The encryption algorithm will get a two kind of input. One is a plain text and another one is a key. By using the key, the encryption algorithm perform various transformations on the plain text. And next one is public key and the private key. This is the pair of keys that have been selected so that if one is used for encryption and another one is used for decryption. Any type of key, either private key or either public key, we can be used for encryption as well as decryption. It depends upon the users and depends upon the application. We have been chosen for public key as a encryption and we have been chosen for private key as a encryption. So next, ciphertext. So the ciphertext, this is the encrypted message produced as an output from the encryption function. It depends upon the plain text and it depends upon the key. For a given message, we have been used two different keys. The two different keys will produce two different ciphertext. For example, ABC as a plain text and the key is 3. For example, ABC is a plain text and the key is a 3. In that key 3, for key 3, we have been received as input DEF. For the same input ABC, so I have been used another key, for example 6, so I will get a different ciphertext. So next, in the public key crypto system, we have to follow some set of essential steps. The steps are: each user generates a pair of key that is to be used for encryption and the decryption of messages. So every user, they want to generate a pair of keys. One is for private key and another one is a public key. So each user places one of the two keys in public registers. So always every user generate a pair of keys. In the pair of keys, the user always will have a public keys. The public keys must be placed into the public registers so that any user or other user, they can access easily the public keys. This is the public key. The companion key is kept private. The other key, the public key, parallel, we have to be generate another one of key. It must be kept secret. So it is called as a private key. As the following figure suggests that the user maintains a collection of public keys obtained from the different users. Yes, this figure represents the Bob. So the sender, now in this example we have considered the sender as Bob and the receiver as Alice. The sender will have a collection of keys. The sender will have a collection of keys. The keys are collected from the different users. This is Joy, Mike, Alice and Ted. So the sender Bob is going to transfer the message to the 4 user so that the Bob will collect the 4 different public keys. Okay. So as the figure suggests, the user maintains a collection of public keys obtained from the different users. Now, if the sender or Bob wishes to send a confidential message to Alice, so that the Bob encrypt the message using Alice public key. Okay, now the sender Bob wants to send a message to the Alice, so that in this diagram, the sender Bob will encrypt the plain text data by using the Alice public key. So one more time I'm repeating. Here the sender Bob will transfer the data to the Alice, so that the sender Bob will encrypt the plain text data by using the Alice public key. So the encryption algorithm, we are using RSA. The RSA algorithm will get a 2 input. One is a plain text X and another one is a Alice public key. So at the end of the encryption algorithm, we will get the ciphertext Y equal to encryption function of PUA means Alice public key. Here A represents the Alice and PU represents the public. So it's a public key of Alice and X is the plain text. And finally, the encryption algorithm, RSA algorithm, will produces the ciphertext. The ciphertext will transmit to the decryption algorithm. At the opposite side, we have a decryption algorithm. So in decryption algorithm, we'll take a two input. One is a private key, PRA means Alice private key. PR is a private, A for Alice. So it's Alice private key. And another one input is a ciphertext. So by using this private key and by using the ciphertext, the decryption algorithm will decrypt the plain text. So this is the public key crypto system, encryption with public. Okay, so the number 3, if the Bob wishes to send a confidential message to Alice, the Bob encrypt the message by using Alice public key. So now you are all clear. So fourth step is when Alice received the message, she decrypt it using her own private key. So in the by using the receiver side, the receiver will receive the ciphertext data and decrypt the data by using their own private key. So that no other recipient can decrypt a message because only Alice knows the Alice private key, because the private key kept as secret. So no other any attacker can decrypt the messages. So this is the example of encryption with public key. So this is the another example of encryption with private key. Another example of encryption with private key. The same procedure, but here the encryption algorithm will get us a two input. One is a plain text, another one is a key. So here just you noted that PR means private and B means Bob. So now for encryption, we are going to use a private key of Bob. So now we are using Bob's private key and encrypted plain text data, and we will get the ciphertext. In the decryption algorithm, we are using the Bob's public key because the Alice, like the previous concept. So likewise, the Alice also will maintain a set of public key ring. So from that, the Alice chooses the Bob's public key. So because the plain text will encrypted by the Bob's private key, the same exact match key which is found by the Alice in the public key ring. So from the key ring, we have been chooses a Bob's public key. By using this public key, we have to be decrypt the ciphertext, and finally we will get the plain text as output. This is the example of encryption with private key. So next we are going to learn about the difference between conventional encryption and the public key encryption. In conventional encryption algorithm, which is a symmetric encryption algorithm, the same algorithm with the same key is used for both encryption and decryption. But in the public key encryption system, the same algorithm with the pair of keys, one is used for encryption and another one is used for decryption, as earlier we said that. So second difference is sender and receiver must share the same algorithm and share the same key. Here the sender and receiver must share the algorithm and each have one of the matched pair of keys. Because we are using asymmetric or public key encryption, we are using two different type of keys. Here the key must be kept secret. We are using one and only key. The one key is kept secret. Here in public key encryption system, any one of the two keys must be kept secret. So, and next point is it's impossible or at least impractical to decipher a message if no other information is available. The same thing is also here reflected. It is impossible or at least impractical to decipher a message if no other information is available. So at the last point is knowledge of the algorithm plus samples of ciphertext must be insufficient to determine the key. The same thing, the knowledge of the algorithm plus one of the keys, here the same key, here one of the keys plus samples of ciphertext must be insufficient to determine the other key or private key. So this is the difference between conventional encryption and the public key encryption. So here this figure represents the public key cryptography confidentiality. So first of all, confidentiality means that the only authorized individuals or authorized system can view sensitive or classified information, which is so the data being sent over the network should not be accessed by any other unauthorized individual. For providing the confidentiality, we are going to use two pair of keys and one pair of key, which means we are going to encrypt the plain text by using the public key and decrypt the ciphertext by using the private key. So I'm one more time repeating. We are going to encrypt the plain text or message source by using the public key of a receiver, and we are going to decrypt the ciphertext. For that purpose, we are going to private key of the receiver, so that we are getting the confidentiality in public key crypto system. So this diagram represents the same. The previous diagram will represent the conveys the same type of informations also in this diagram will represent. So this is the message source. It is known as X. The encryption algorithm will encrypt the data. For encryption purpose, we are going to use the public key of receiver, so that PUB, and we will get the ciphertext. And the decryption algorithm, we are going to decrypt it. Input is ciphertext, and another one is a private key of receiver, and finally we will get the X as plain text. So in between, there is a one cryptanalyst. The cryptanalyst wants to recover a data. Suppose they want to recover a data means X cap. The X cap represents the partial knowledge of the plain text, and private key, this is the private key. PRB cap means this is the partial knowledge about the private key. Suppose the cryptanalyst wants to discover this particular message means they have been considered on only the X cap. Suppose the cryptanalyst wants to discover the following substantial messages means they want to consider on the private key of cap. So in this diagram will represents the public key cryptography confidentiality. So by getting the confidentiality, we must encrypt the algorithm, we must encrypt the plain text by using public key and decrypt by the private key. So is authorized the confidentiality. So next, this diagram will represents the public key cryptography authentication. By getting this authentication, the same concept once again I am going to explain. So in this diagram will express the authentication. So whenever we get the authentication, what do you mean by authentication means? The authentication is the process of verifying the identity of a user or information. Suppose the Alice, so suppose the Bob wants to send a message to Alice means the Bob also authorized, the Bob also authorized person. So he or she must be share a identity to the receiver, so that the message source X is encrypted by using Bob's private key. So once we encrypted the data by the way of on their own private key means it proves her identity or it proves him identity to the receiver. So it is a authentication. So the encryption function will use the two kind of input. One is X and another one is a private key. So while we are using the private key, it must demonstrate the authentication. And for decryption function, we have been used for a public key of the same pair. And finally, we will get the destination. Okay, in the next class, we are going to learn about the RSA. Thank you.